What a great way to start a YouTube career, just making enemies. Hello boys, for the first one in a series of hopefully more than one uploads, I decided to do something that I haven't seen done in this community yet, and that is a tier list. I know it's original, but this tier list is a little different than what you may be used to. In this tier list, we are doing Guntubers. For those of you who are not familiar with how tier lists work, it's pretty self-explanatory. You've got your F, D, C, B, and A. But then above that, you have your S tier, or in other words, special. Since everyone in this community is kind of moving towards a direction I think more people should be moving towards, I don't really think that anyone's going to make it to F except... I don't think anyone else is going to make it to F. And now, let's get into it. So starting off with my dad, he's not exactly what you would call a guntuber per se. Like, he does a lot of shooting videos and stuff like that, but it's mostly memey, which, yeah, I can't really say anything about that. I think Brandon's biggest problem is that he's too restrictive on himself, and if he kind of just doubled down and went all out with the goofiness, the over-the-top sense, I think that that would more help him come into his own, if that makes sense. So as he currently stands, I'm going to put Dad at B. Next up, we've got Demolition Ranch. So Demolition Ranch is a miracle worker in the boomer community. And what I mean by that is people who normally are just, well, I've got a bolt-action rifle to hunt deer, and that's all I need. Go to this guy's videos. And I don't know why this applies to Demo Ranch specifically, but it's so weird. It's like every older dude who thinks guns are cool, at some point one of their stories will go, well, have you seen that Demolition Ranch guy on YouTube? And I mean, the picture here kind of proves it. He's got like 4 shotgun barrels. And that may sound like a bad thing, but I really do mean that he is a godsend to the boomer community. Because people who otherwise would have no interest in firearms got interested because of him. But once you get past that, it's kind of just a series of videos about things exploding, which, to be clear, is beautiful. As far as ranking it among these other guys, there's not quite the diversity or wideness I'd like to see. He has done so much for people who otherwise would not be interested in firearms that I've got to at least throw him up here in B tier. And I do like Demo Ranch a lot. Whenever you are not just contributing to the community, but you're drawing new members in, that's a big deal. People are less likely to click on a 40-minute review of a rifle they've never heard of than they are 50 BMG blows up 500 toilet paper rolls at once. So up next, we've got the Military Arms channel. Military Arms channel is a happy medium between being really in-depth on firearms reviews and also being entertaining to watch. They are always excited about the products they're reviewing, and they always do interesting tests with them, whether it be torture test or long range or something like that. I know that whenever there's a weapon that I'm thinking about getting, one of the first things I do is find a Mac review on it and see what they have to say about it, because I really do value their opinion. For that reason alone, I think they have a special place in not only my heart, but everyone else's. So, Mac, you get an A. Now, I want to make it clear that this whole list is entirely subjective. There is no qualifications, there's no big ranking, there is no science to this. It is entirely my own opinion. And you may be asking, well, Boogaloo Boy, what makes you qualified to rank all of these YouTubers who are bigger than you? And to that I say, you're absolutely right. So moving on, Leaky Tactical is an airsofter from Japan, which means up until about half a year ago, he had never shot a real-world firearm. That was until Lucas from T-Rex Arms brought him out to shoot. During a shoot in which Leaky was a first-time shooter, he blew absolutely everyone out of the water. Immediately threw out all the myths about dry firing not being proper training, airsoft not being proper training, weapon handling not being proper training. So if nothing else, then the reason that he blew everyone out of the water and absolutely amazed me and a lot of other people with his capabilities for a kid who's never shot a gun. I've got to throw him in the A tier. All right, next up we have Tony Cowden. I'm not even sure if that is Tony Cowden, but it's even funnier if it isn't. Tony, compared to some of these other guys, maybe a little bit smaller, but I wanted to throw him on this list because he had not come to my attention until a few months ago when a sort of drama started between him and T-Rex Arms over Tony telling a follower to kill himself on Instagram. Now, do I care about that? No. Was it something smart for Tony to say? No. But then I got looking through his stuff, and his entire persona is just him trying to be so tough all the time. I know that's kind of a thing in the gun community, especially with older people, of the whole, oh, look at me, I'm so cool, I talk with the deep voice, and I should not try to do that again. But not only is it the whole tough guy routine, it's like the worst kind of tough guy routine where he puts down everyone who isn't as cool as he is. Normally, I would say that he's just average, a C tier. I've got to fill up those lower levels. So, Tony, you are going in the D tier, my friend, which I'm sure he'd appreciate. Next up, we have Mike from Garand Thumb. Now, Mike wasn't the first one to get me into shooting. We're going to get to that person in a second. But Mike certainly got me into real shooting. Let me tell you, coming from someone who worked at a gun shop and just kind of thought guns are cool, whenever I clicked on a review of Mike's just to watch a firearm perform, and I would see those intros of him doing speed drills, full kit, cool guns, it made me want to go do those things, which I guess is kind of the point. And now that I'm on this side of the fence, I do the exact same thing. So maybe it's just a cycle, but that's besides the point. I can confidently say if Garand Thumb didn't exist, Boogaloo Boy wouldn't exist. And everything I loved about Military Arms Channel, going into weapons or looking at different kinds of equipment I want to get, all of that, like times 10 for Garand Thumb. So yeah, you know where this is going. Garand Thumb is going to be our first S tier. God bless you, Flannel Daddy. Next up, we have Mr. Clean. I gotta admit, I didn't get into guns and gear for a long time until I found a review he did of a rifle I was looking to buy. Ian of Forgotten Weapons. Ian is the best at doing what Ian does. He has to be one of the world's most knowledgeable people on firearms, but not only that, whenever he talks about it, you can tell he absolutely loves what he does. I think we can all say thank you, Gun Jesus, for educating us on things we didn't know we needed to buy, but our wallets will always hate us for. Alright, so earlier, whenever I was talking about Garand Thumb, I said that he wasn't the one who got me into shooting, but we'll get to that. So now we're getting to that. Friends introduced me to a man known as Hickok 45, and that was the start of the proverbial spiral that just keeps on going. But really though, Hickok 45 was my first step into the whole realm of shooting, and I know he was for several other people as well. The guy just has like a grandpa energy to him. Like whenever he's talking about old lever actions or shotguns or M16s, there's always a spirit of, no, you kids know this isn't a toy, but if you take your time to learn about it, it sure will be fun for you and the whole family. And admittedly, as time's gone on, I've noticed myself watching him less and less, just because I've kind of moved into more so the using side of firearms than the knowledgeable side of it. But I know for a fact Hickok was the first person that kind of led me down this direction that I'm in now. But for these reasons, Hickok definitely gets an A tier. He's just kind of like a Santa Claus figure that got a bunch of kids into shooting firearms, a bunch of adults into shooting firearms, and I think that everyone you see on this list would be vastly less known if it wasn't for him. Actually, no. You know what? I talked myself into it. Santa, you go S. Because everyone else on this list, I wouldn't even be making this list. I wouldn't even be on camera right now if it wasn't for you. So, S for Santa Claus. Thank you. Next up, we have Iraq Veteran 8888. The reason that I included the picture as Eric and Barry is because, for one, that's when I watched the show the most, and in my opinion, that's when the channel was not necessarily at its peak, but definitely grew the following that it maintains to today. A lot of their videos always follow the idea of just being about, hey, guns are cool. And not that there's anything bad with that, but just when looking at personal opinions and ranking, it is a bit harder to justify a higher spot. Like, I loved, especially whenever I got into firearms, watching their pawn shop walkthroughs or top 5 series, or especially things like High Point Man. While interesting and cool to watch, I still think it's kind of on that surface level of, hey, ain't this neat? Which again, totally fine. But when comparing it to people like Ian of Forgotten Weapons or Mike from Garand Thumb, it just kind of falls a little bit short. And while I love Eric and Barry, rest in peace Barry, and will always love the channel, I'm going to be moderate and just give it a dead center of the road rating. So, Iraq Veteran 8888, you are our first C tier. Next up, we have FPS Russia, which, if you'll recall, is no longer in existence since he was arrested for the Devil's Lettuce. FPS Russia's interesting because where some of these guys do several videos a week and have been going for years, this dude would do like one video every 4 months and everyone would collectively lose their minds. It was always astounding how many people watched FPS Russia. There were people who had absolutely no interest in firearms or the community at all, who were like, oh, did you see that new FPS Russia video where he blew up a fridge door and almost decapitated himself? While I loved his videos and still go back and watch some, he was like the definition of the guns are cool line that a lot of people get stuck up on. I've got to be fair and think about him as a YouTuber and the videos I'm on, and I think when compared to these different guys, I'm going to throw him right in here. Next up, we have Lucas Bodkin of T-Rex Arms. Lucas, especially nowadays, has kind of become the definitive Guntuber. And as someone who's watched him for years now, it's been great to see. Especially when you think about it as just a guy who started a company to get into firearms, and to watch him grow from small time to this huge business. Lucas Bodkin has made tremendous steps in the firearm community. First of all, he normalized things like body armor and weapon proficiency. He normalized complex drills such as vehicle drills or self-defense tactics and crowds and things like that. With his group at T-Rex Arms, got rid of the state ammo tax. I think for those reasons alone, pretty much every criticism of him kind of goes out the window, especially guys who just don't like him because he's not tough enough. And even worse, people who think he's not qualified to talk because he's never been in the military or law enforcement, which if you legitimately think that someone's opinion on weapons is invalid because they weren't a government employee, I think that you can all agree with me when I say Lucas absolutely deserves a top of the spot list. Next up, we got Larry Vickers, someone who's never really watched him that much. When I did watch his videos, it kind of felt like a History Channel special, which is great, but R. Lee Ermey isn't in it. And some people absolutely love him. I don't know him enough to. And from where I'm at right now, I'm going to throw him in with Tony Cowden at the D list. Next up, we've got Lucine Black of Voda Consulting. That's better. Also, just so you know, I tried to add a new tier with the name Voda, and it immediately crashed the entire website. So, Voda, let's see, what hasn't Voda done? He shot one of his students during a training instruction. He got kicked out of an indoor range for shooting the ceiling. He took credit for the creation of the John Wick movies. And if you don't know Voda, or Voda Consulting, or Lucine Black himself, I highly encourage you to go follow them, because it is a head trip every day. So Lucine, you get the honorary rank of Voda. And if for no other reason, just because I wouldn't insult the Gusher Knob boys by putting them on the same level as you. You all are welcome. You owe me. Next up, we've got Pat McNamara. From what I understand about him, the dude is the real deal when it comes to the whole persona of being a combat fighter. But I will say, Pat is definitely the best of the tough guy crowd. But on top of that, he's got some pretty cool stuff. A lot of his videos about different shooting techniques and working out are very useful and have benefited me a lot. So I'm going to kick him up even further to B tier, up there with my dad and Demo Ranch themselves. No one on this list is on there strictly because their character or their personality, except maybe Voda. All right, after that, we've got Paul Harrell. Now, I included Paul on this list because I didn't discover him until recently, and by God, he is one of the scariest people I've ever seen. He fills me with the uncomfortable sense of dread that Larry Vickers and Tony Cowden wish they could. But that being said, from the videos I've watched recently, he's a funny guy. That stuff I said about his personality, I hope is intentional. And if Hickok 45 seems like a grandpa for the gun community, Paul Harrell is absolutely the crazy uncle. Paul, you are going to the B slot. Next up, we have got Drew Hopkins, another one of the T-Rex Arms crew. What I love so much about Drew is that he is the perfect counter to Lucas. Whenever Lucas gets to a place where he's kind of doubling down on the seriousness, there is Drew to absolutely rip the carpet out from under him. For that reason and the fact that I just like the guy, Drew is going to A tier. Next up, we have Polinar Tactical, and specifically this is a picture of Monka. It'd be great if I, looked stuff up before I did this video. For those who don't know, Polinar Tactical is a European-based shooting group. They started out doing a lot of cool videos about room clearing or VIP movement and things like that. They have several videos that always made me laugh, such as the different Guntuber montages or different kind of people you'll meet at the range and stuff like that. Whenever I worked at a gun shop that kind of branded itself under the tactical mantra, I would put Polinar Tactical on all the time because it gets people's attention. It's funny to watch and you learn something along the way. Polinar, you are going to the A list. Next up, we have the man himself, Taran Tactical. Now, without talking about anything directly, I think we all know that Taran's responsible for the most drama the gun community's seen in ever. And I, for one, have no idea who would even think to contribute to all of that nonsense or do something as despicable as make a meme out of the whole ordeal. Taran's channel and content is mostly promotional material. Kind of fits in with the whole Vickers Cowden crowd of the tough guy routine, but it's not so much about being tough as it's about the ladies. And I really don't care for that whole aesthetic any more than I do the Macho Man routine. But he did give us the John Wick movies, so he's got to be at least one of them. And then last but certainly not least, we have John Lovell of Warrior Poet Society. John Lovell is very similar to Lucas in the way that he was one of the people who normalized training across the board for a lot of people who otherwise would never have thought of it. Now, the thing that stands out to me the most about WPS and what got me into him originally is his whole branding. Warrior Poet Society doesn't just sound cool. It's also the approach he takes to everything he does. He's a very scholarly man and doesn't just stand by the idea that someone needs to be trained physically, but also mentally. Now, for all those reasons, I was just gonna... Anyway, the dude just kind of feels like a nice dad. John, you are S tier. I think this list looks pretty good. I'm happy with it. Again, left to right doesn't matter. It's just if you're at that tier, you're at that tier. Thank you all so much for watching. It really does mean a lot. Share this if you want, because I think it'd be hilarious if like Tony or Brandon watch this video. I hope that you all have a good day, and I will see you boys later. Bye.